You see, in life, we have a choice. We can store things in our tank or our trunk. And I wasn't choosing to store it in my trunk, where most people store the stuff in their trunk, the garbage that happens to them, where it slows you down and weighs you down. I decided to store it in my fuel tank, and I converted it into fuel, momentum, motivation, learning experiences. And I would always elevate when an adversity hit. And I just tell myself, keep going, dude. Keep going. Because I know if I keep going, I can't be stopped until I'm plucked from this planet.
Purpose-driven man is unstoppable. Mike C-Roc, welcome to the Man of War podcast, man. It is an honor to have you on.
Thank you, Rafa. My pleasure, man. Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome.
I love rocking podcasts.
Well, we do our best here, man. We, our goal is to disseminate the best possible information to help men out there become stronger in every facet of their lives. So let's dive into this. Who are you? Introduce yourself for our people to hear a little bit about your life story and, get a little bit of an insight of who Mike C-Roc is.
Yeah, I'm just a guy that makes people go further faster. I've set an intention that if you get in my environment, you cannot help elevate. It's impossible. And, if you're talking to me 20 years ago, I wouldn't be a guy that you'd want to have on this show. Truthfully, I've gone on a journey, self-development, self-awareness, and then really leaning into this thing I found, which is service. And it's changed my life, man. I have a great relationship with Jesus and pray all the time. And it's really changed everything about the way I go about things, the results that I get, the people that are drawn into me. And, I can't stress that enough, that I've seen some amazing things since I've been really developing. It's all about relationship, but developing this relationship with God. I've come from a lot of brokenness. And and I just, I'm so glad I took the route that I took versus the other road that some people take when they come from brokenness,
Talk to me about servitude. What does that mean to you?
Yeah, look, we got to take care of ourselves, and you got to put yourself in the best position possible. So let's start with there. I mean, number one, identifying what you're put here for is imperative so that you can have clear decision process. I like to make binary decisions. Binary decisions eliminate chaos and confusion. So I'm either going towards the mission once identified or away from it. I'm building or destroying. And so for me, that simplification has changed my life. And so I've done that. And then I've also, from there, what areas of my life can I better? Where am I weak? Getting really aware of an self-assessment of where am I weak? What are my insecurities? What are my strengths? And then leaning into my strengths and then working on my weaknesses and insecurities. So all areas of my life, marriage, I've been married 22 years to a beautiful lady, 2 healthy kids. I mean, I feel like I've progressed so much as a parent, as a husband, as a leader. So number one, working on myself was the main thing. Then it allows me to be able to serve, because I can only serve to the degree of my preparedness. Mm-hmm. And so for me, it's a constant focus every day. I assess consistently, daily. Where am I? Where are my thoughts? Where are my words? Where are my actions? Who are the people around me right now? Do they align with my mission? And then that allows me to be free in serving, because I tried to serve before. I always loved giving to people and helping and this and that, but I wasn't in a position to do that. And I couldn't do it authentically because I knew inside that I was broken and I still needed development. I needed to, and I was running from it. And so then once you do that and you can lead and serve authentically, people receive it differently. There's a different reception, different response. And I noticed that big time. I used to get annoyed with, man, people aren't listening to me, man. I'd bang my head on the wall. I have all this information. I know all this stuff. I know so much. And then I would try to disseminate that, and I would not get a response or a reception that I would expect. But once I started working on myself and developing into a situation where I created this attraction model, now people come to me without me having to really, constantly be on somebody about something, right? And they respect it and they receive it.
So a lot of guys, a lot of men walk around this planet, sometimes aimless, but more importantly, they're invisible. You mentioned here at one point in your life, maybe you were speaking loudly in a room, but nobody was listening, right? And, what do you think it takes for a man to be noticed? You said you made that reinvention in your life. You rebuilt yourself. So now you have a little bit more uh, power when it comes to when you speak, people listen. How did you get there?
Yeah, I mean, when you are insecure and you could be shouting to the rooftops, people can sense this energy. I study quantum physics, quantum resonance, and I understand how energy works. And I understand that vibes matter and emotions are contagious. So you can be on the surface wanting to help and energetic and enthused and all this, but yet if you're really not, when you're not around anybody and you're by yourself, people sense that. It's not
Mhm.
authentic. Authenticity has a certain frequency to it. So how do you do that? Well, number one, you got to really get clear on who you are and who you want to be. Because if you don't know who you are, who you want to be, and what you stand for, what your values are, what your non negotiables are, what triggers you, you don't prepare yourself and then you'll react emotionally in certain situations. And so, how do you do that? You just work on yourself by getting very, very clear on what you want, who you want to be, and then start stepping into what that person would talk like. What would they think like? What
Mhm.
actions would they be taking? And who should they hang around? If I'm talking one game, but I'm hanging around dudes that are just not aligned with the game I'm talking, people sense that. They see that. I had a conversation this morning with a partner of mine, and I'm like, hey, we used to hang out in this one place, but I don't feel good when I hang out there anymore because I know in the back of my mind that if the people that I do business with and in my community were to come into that room, and it could be a virtual room, it could be a live room, I wouldn't be proud of that. So I can't hang out in those environments anymore, right? And people think that if nobody's looking, that it's okay. But the problem with that is, and in your mind, you're storing things that you're doing things that you shouldn't be doing. And when you come into the environment of the people that you're around that you wouldn't want them knowing, it could be a bar, it could be gambling, it could be strip clubs, it could be whatever. It could be just hanging around the wrong people.
Mhm.
And you don't come off authentic, and that vibrates out. There's nothing you can really do about that.
I love the fact that you keep on going back to authentic. That's important. I could feel it to you. And I think that to me personally, the same way. I mean, it's being an authentic leader is critical. In our day and age, there are a lot of leaders, so-called leaders, that really don't hold any weight as from a perspective really of where people are not following them, they're following their position, right?
Yep.
And you
Yep.
see that in executive environments, and you see that in different business models, and all over law enforcement and the military, where people just respect the rank, so they follow the rank, but they don't really follow the person. And it takes an authentic person to gain a real following. So let's talk a little bit about that. Um, how did you get to be authentic? In other words, going out there on social media, putting yourself out. I mean, it takes, some cojones, as we say here, like it takes balls, man, to go out there and be authentic. I struggled a lot. I come from an undercover background, law enforcement. So my whole life is always private, 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 private. And the shift of being open and authentic and real with people, that took a while. What was your process like?
Well, a couple things. If you're not proud of who you are, like who you really are, that's a sign that you need to work on it, right? Because you don't want people to see that part. But the other thing is, once you start working on that and you know what's right and you get in alignment, you're not here to please people. I'm not put on this planet to please people. I'm here to serve an all powerful God. And that's what my goal is. So if I'm out there and I know I'm on point, I know I'm in alignment, and I can go speak my game and share with people and serve people, I can be authentic because I'm not concerned what people think, because I'm not here to serve them. I was speaking in Utah, in Park City. I was out in a small event with Richard Branson, and speaking on stage. And then I started talking about my testimony and my faith, my relationship with Jesus. And afterwards, it resonated with a lot of people. And they were like, I've never heard people talk about this at a business event where they shared their faith and they weren't worried about offending people.
Mhm.
But it really inspired me. And this night, the lady said, "You don't ever think about that? And what if you offend people?" And I said, "I honestly don't, because I'm not here to please people. I'm not. I'm here to
Right.
serve and share my experience with people so that they can tap into something that's worked for me."
Sure.
And so, yeah, it comes down to when you get really solid in your foundation and your commitment, not worrying about what people think, and by the way, Rafa, the thing about this is that you got to come to grips with the fact that you're going to attract the right people in your life at that time, and more importantly, you're going to repel the wrong people, and that's a good thing.
That's right. I agree. So, I'm a Christian man. My wife is a pastor. Her father is a very, very well-known pastor. I mean, God is at the core of my life and my family's life. We've been married 21 years, and it's it's important. I have three boys. I have a girl. She's 12, going on 21. No comment.
Yeah,
But
I got a
anyways,
13-year-old daughter. Yeah, I understand.
yeah. So it gets, you're living a life where, yes, God is at the center. However, and I say this from an angle where this is the world that I live. I've coached probably in the neighborhood of 12,000 men over the last 9 years. And right now, Jesus is a big seller, okay, in our country. And I see it as a positive and then a negative. I think in many aspects, a lot of these so-called man camps programs out there that are trying to use Jesus as a selling point. And when you get down to the nitty-gritty, that's just what it is, a selling point. I think from a perspective of, especially when it comes to men who are real Christian, God-fearing men, Jesus should be part of, your life as a whole, right? I mean, you have it in the center of your life. You don't even think twice about it, right? God it's a tremendous energy in your life, just like in my life. The problem that I have is when individuals are selling that to the weak constantly, and it's in a negative manner, because then you realize that a lot of these programs and people and coaches, it's just a pyramid scheme to get into another, Jesus program here and a Jesus program there. That's a big turnoff for me, man. A big, big turnoff. What are your thoughts on that? Because I asked this recently to a few other podcast guests because I started to see. I'm just curious to see. You're a God fearing man. Where you stand on this.
Yeah, it's not a selling thing, it's a living thing. You mentioned living, it's life, right? It's a
Yes.
living thing. It's not a sales benefit feature. It's living. So what I look at is, and anything that I do is I just be a living demonstration, right? I don't put it in my copy, I don't put it in my messaging. I just live it. And then it's seen authentically. But if you're talking about it all the time, just in your sales copy and all this other stuff, and by the way, look, here's the thing. I look at these other folks. I have grace and mercy because God's had grace and mercy for me. I just know that they're on a different journey than I am. They're not a different journey necessarily, maybe, but different place in their journey. And they're evolving as they go too. And they may think in the back of their minds that this is the right thing and the right way to approach it.
Mhm.
So I have grace and mercy for those folks that do that. I don't look at it as my role or responsibility to hammer them, or however, people that subscribe to that and they go forward, and if they get taken advantage of, they get taken advantage of. It's part of their journey too. They need to go
Yeah.
through that to learn something, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
To find
I
out
agree.
who to trust and who to spend time with. And understand, like, how do I get that authentic person. Now, look, there's a
Mhm.
lot of people that I looked up to. I should never put a man on a pedestal, but when I was younger, put people on a pedestal, whether it's athletes or uh, influencers or what have you. And I can't tell you the number of times I met someone, and when I met them, I was disappointed, or they came out in the news and they had an issue legally or just ethically, and I was
Sure.
disappointed, and it disappointed me. And I've seen that over and over and over again, where I've been disappointed by putting people on a pedestal. So
Yeah.
one thing about me when I built my brand, and I started going on a lot of I've been on over 1,200 podcasts as a guest. I've been on live stages in front of 15,000 plus people, presidents, celebrities, and all that. After that, or before the speaking event, people would come up to me, want to take selfies and all this other stuff. But one thing I always knew is that I never wanted somebody to be disappointed with who they thought I was,
Yeah.
from my
Mhm.
content, from seeing me virtually or what have you. Now, they may say, I thought you were a lot taller.
Ta-
right? They might, when I'm with my wife, they might say, that's your
Sure.
wife, but they're never going to be disappointed with who they thought I was.
Right. That's a big deal. You know, that's a good mindset to have. See, my world is a little bit different. I am the guy that's going to call you out. It is my mission to maybe rewire some of the way that some of these men are thinking. I mentioned something a while back. Look, if every other word out of a man's mouth is quoting the Bible, or every other, response via comment is quoting the Bible, it is my metrics, analytics will prove it over and over again that these men are, when you look at their lives, they're not living it as they, unfortunately, and I hate to say that, but it's all a front. It's almost a protection system, right? Because, like you said a little bit ago, is hey, man, look, if you're living your life, embodying, God's presence in your life, and doing your best, right, to live in His image. I mean, this is, you don't sit there, talk about it and quote about it all day long. I mean, you live and you're in a mission. Okay. The beautiful thing is when you are out there and you are speaking, when I go into speaking engagements and speak in front of people, sometimes I do speak about God and I'm very open about it. I'm in a stage in my life where I'm almost, I'm almost there, like meaning that I fully open, kind of almost open that bottle up, but I'm like 85% there, not 100%. So I'm striving to do that. I'm fighting to get better at opening up who I am to crowds and things like that. So I love the fact that you go out there and you don't give a crap, man. In the end, you are speaking from the heart who you are and being authentic. How do we influence people, right? Other men, other individuals, men and women, to live that kind of lifestyle? Because for me, I would love to connect. In my inner circle, everybody is very authentic, but my inner circle is very small. To get into that inner circle, you're going to have to prove it, right? Yeah, I'm going to have a certain type of belief system in you. So how do you and in your mind, like, how do you get people to be authentic, to be open with you?
Yeah. So, first of all, vulnerability, man. Some people in power that create these programs and different things, they sit on this thing, this their throne, and they're never vulnerable.
Yeah.
They never share the things that they went through, the stupid mistakes they made, the stupid things they said, own up to it, take responsibility,
Hmm.
share what they've learned from it. Right. I'm not afraid to do that. There's times, I mean, I wrote a book and put all the stuff in the book and just said, hey, it is what it is, man. My kids will read it one day and it is what it is. And so vulnerability is a huge thing for me, man. And the other thing is really one thing I learned in a lot of the research and study I've done is the importance of talking and confronting something about something. So, for example, talking is communicating. Communication is the cause of all problems and the solution of all problems. So, one thing I get on sometimes is I'll talk about the topic of help, the word help, right? And I think so many people have a warped sense or negative connotation of the word help. They either failed at something that they tried to help someone and they failed at helping them. Somebody tried to help them and then they got taken advantage of, and that person tried to help them and they failed. Immediately after those situations, those failures, a decision's made in our mind, which becomes a belief that help is no good. So a lot of times when I get around people, if I'm on stage or if I'm in my community, I bring up the topic of help and get a communication started on the word help.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if I have run into some people that have problems asking for help or using help or giving help, I say, hey, listen, when's the last time you tried to help someone and failed? When's the last time that you can remember that you tried to help someone and failed, or they tried to help you and failed, and bring that up and start communicating about it? They start to realize that was just kind of a one-off. And here's what happened in that situation. It's not the word help. It's that situation just happened. Maybe I was asking for help from the wrong person. I
Yeah.
didn't identify the right person. So for me, getting through to people is vulnerability, and then getting them to understand that help is a good thing.
Let's talk about leadership. Any role models in your life that you look up to?
Well, again, I'll bring it up again. Jesus, I strive to be like more like Jesus every day. That's my goal, right? Because man has disappointed me so many times in my life when I held a role model up in my life. Now, I will see the good in people. I have mentors, and mentors, I'll pick out the good things that I see in them, the things that align with my mission and my core values. And then I'll just discard the bad things because I know everybody has their things, and some of them are in the darkness or in the closet, right? They don't bring them out; they got skeletons. But when it comes to surface, and you start seeing some of the negative things they have, you just okay, that's that person, that's a human being. Okay, put that to the side. Let's take the good things from them. But I don't put people on a pedestal anymore. I put what they do on a pedestal sometimes, right? So I'll see the things like, I get teared up and chills sometimes when I'm watching someone that's put so much work into something, and they
Hmm.
finally get to see the fruits of their labor. Rory McIlroy, for example, just won the Masters this past year, this past Masters, and he had been trying to win the Masters for so long, and he's
Yeah,
had a lot of
for sure.
accomplishments, right? But we saw the release of pressure when he finally sunk that last putt. And I'm watching and I'm just living through him, feeling that feeling.
Yep.
Right. So all the work, dedication, commitment, everything that went into that, that's what I look at. And I value that. I put that on a pedestal. Right. That's what matters to me. It's not the person, the human being. Human beings are flawed. And I had to do work on that because, look, I grew up watching sports, and I had sports heroes. I had business heroes, people that were, when I first heard of Grant Cardone, for example, and I read the 10X rule, I'm like, this guy vibes with me, man. And I started watching all his stuff and immersing myself in his content. And I found myself at my younger age putting him on a pedestal and be like, this is the guy I want to strive. Then I started to realize and see the flaws human beings have. And I started to realize, wait a minute, I'm not going to put it. I'll be friends with him and pick up things and learn from him, but I'm not going to put him on a pedestal. And so that's the way I approach it.
Respect. What does that mean to you?
Respect starts with respecting yourself. You can't have anything for anybody else unless you do it for yourself. So respect comes to me with integrity, ethics, responsibility. And if you can show those things to the best of your ability and be in that 99% for those things for yourself, you'll be able to respect other people. But until you do that, you won't be able to respect other people. So integrity, ethics, and responsibility really comes to mind when I think about respect.
Very good. And I think respect nowadays is something that's taken for granted. It's in my book, you earn respect, right? And I'm not sure that people understand that, especially the younger generation. I mean, you came up what in the 80s?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Born in
yeah,
77.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it's man, look, you look back and you're saying, respect, the way we grew up, right, in the 70s and 80s and even early 90s, respect meant a little bit more than what it does now. I think there's a lot of disrespect going on, and I'm hoping that we start seeing a change, a more positive change, being more respectful across the board. Since I was younger, I would respect, law enforcement, grandparents, like my grandparents were, my goodness, are you kidding me? Like big time. People of older age, I was very respectful to people. Now it's just like nobody cares. You can be a 75-year-old man and the 18-year-old kid is cussing at you. It's just, I don't dig that. I think that we are missing that respect factor in our society. All right. So let's talk about entrepreneurship. And, you've been a successful entrepreneur, built your brand, uh, and especially now in our new generation here over the last 15, 20 years, where there's a lot of social media, we're able to connect like this in podcasts. There's a opportunity for people out there everywhere, right, to build their brands. You Give me a couple of ideas of what you've done to position yourself where you are right now in your life.
Yeah. So I ran a successful mortgage and real estate operation. I had branches from Philadelphia to Miami. 20 years I spent in that business, building, hundreds of employees, doing very well financially. And I would come home miserable. I have a beautiful wife, 22 years, healthy kids, house on the water. Everything's great. Why am I feeling this way? And so I had to go deep and eventually, because I felt trapped. The money was great. And I was just like, man, I feel trapped. This is crazy. I don't want to do this the rest of my life. Well, I hit 40 and I was like, I got to figure something out. So I started working on myself. That's, I feel like embarrassed to say that. It took me till I was 40 years old to really do the work, but I just didn't know any better. I didn't know any. Wasn't there for me. And maybe I did, but I just didn't grasp it. I didn't have that aha moment. Mm-hmm. And so when I hit 40, I said, I got to do some self-work. So I started finding out who am I? What was the purpose God put me here for? What are my strengths and weaknesses? What am I a genius in that I should really lean into? What are my non-negotiables? What do I stand for? Right. And when I did that, things started to become really clear to me. I started surrounding myself with mentors, some of the top in the world. And one of my mentors told me one day, dude, you got to get known globally. And I was like, I don't know about that. I've been on regional magazines and news, and I figured out how to do all that stuff. But I don't like the way it makes me feel. He's like, no. That's because you're in ego. You're thinking ego. And the ego is designed to keep you safe, right? That's it. It shouldn't go any further than that. You should be thinking about impact, is what he told me. And he said, most people like yourself are in chase mode. And you cannot be fulfilled when you're in chase mode because it's never enough. You're chasing. And he said, you need to create what I call an attraction model. And you do that by getting known, but first understanding who you are and being authentic, and then leaning into that unapologetically. And I said, okay, that makes sense, but I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to get known. And he said, you don't need to know how. You need to commit. Because if you knew the how and the things that you're going to have to do and the steps that how long it would take and what people would say about you, you wouldn't do it because you're not committed. So commit first, and then you'll see what happens. So I said, okay, I got it. That makes sense. I'm in. I'm all in. What do I got to do? He said, now go get on podcasts. And I didn't even know 6 years ago what a podcast was. Okay, I'm embarrassed to tell you that, especially with what I do with my company now. But I didn't want to tell him that. So I said, you know what? This is Grant Cardone, by the way, when I was talking to him. I said, okay, how many, or what podcast should I go on? He said, all of them. I said, all of them? He said, all of them. I said, all right, man, I'm in. So I got off the call. I hop on the call with my executive assistant at the mortgage company at the time, Kim. I said, Kim, I need to get on podcasts every day. I don't care what we got to do. Just got to get on it. She says, how? I said, I don't know. I don't know how to do it. We just got to do it. Let's get committed. Let's do it. Now, what I found out, Rafa, at that time is, and I figured out this formula, that your attention, we only have so much attention we can spend or pay attention to, right?
Sure.
What's directing that attention? Well, intention is directing that attention. You're either directing your attention from your intentions or someone else's intentions. It could be social media, the news, your family, your friends. And we talked about this on your show a little bit about resentment. It can build up, right? If you go off of someone else's intention, your attention will start paying attention to what they want you to pay attention to. And then you resent that. You don't feel right. I found out that formula when I started committing to getting known globally, that when I set my intention, my attention all of a sudden started seeing things that were right in front of my face at all times. So I saw people in my network that had podcasts. I didn't even know that they had one. I didn't know what it was. All of a sudden I saw all of them have podcasts. And I'm like, hey, let's get on a show, man. Let's light it up. Let's shoot some content. Let's go. And they would bring me on and I would light it up. I was the first guest on many shows. I was going on women's shows where they were talking about menopause and perimenopause. And I didn't even know what that was, but I was still going on it. I was still lighting up because I was coachable and I was doing what I was told because I was committed. And I did 7 to 10 podcasts a week for 5 years straight. Over 1,200 podcast appearances. And I had friends of mine and co-founders of companies I was in. My wife, why are you doing that? Do you know how much time you're spending doing that? You're not getting paid anything for that. I said, nope, I'm committed. I know what I'm doing. No, just let me go. And eventually my life changed. I had massive network expansion to the point where I was on stage with TV personalities and presidents and billionaires and celebrities. And I'm in the green room with Tucker Carlson and RFK Jr. in Vegas last year or 2 years ago, wondering how the heck did I get here? But I'm realizing how amazing it was and the ability that I could be peers with these people, which I never thought was possible before the commitment. And then eventually I had this network and I felt like I was underutilizing it. And I was making it still about me at the time. How can I utilize this network? We've all heard the term, your network is your net worth. And I was thinking to myself, how can I utilize this network? I got to figure out a way. I know all these people, and I felt like I had to do something with every single person in my network, which that's not even possible. And in prayer one day, God doesn't speak to me verbally, it comes in thoughts. And I heard him say, dude, I didn't give you this network for you. This network is for other people. And you're supposed to be the catalyst to connect these people to do amazing things and do my work. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that I didn't figure that out before. And so from that point on, I aim to serve, to be the connecting person, the collaborator, the catalyst for amazing things to happen. And that just elevated everything I was doing for my brand, my businesses. It created an attraction model, it drew people into my life that I could never even imagine knowing or them knowing me. And that's where we are today. And we work with some of these people, getting them out on the top podcasts in the world. And they love us because we're helping cause and create futures for them. And that's one of the most attractive things you can do for people is cause and create a future for them.
Love that. Very powerful. All right, let's talk about your marriage, your relationship with your wife, your home life, kids. I mean, you're a busy guy, you're out there, moving, shaking and baking. How do you hold the fort down? I mean, what's your relationship like with your wife?
Well, we've had a journey, 22 years, you go through things, right? And I was not the best husband I just didn't know how to be the best husband. I don't remember my parents together. Okay.
Mhm.
And I saw my mom married 3 times and my dad twice and conflicts and child support battles, custody battles. I didn't know how to be a good father and good husband. And so I had to go in through an evolution. But again, just like service and getting this service mentality changed in my business life and my brand, it changed my household. Turning into a service person for my wife and my kids versus the old Italian method, I'll call it, which I witnessed as a kid, my grandfathers and uncles and my dad, of having a woman serve you. Now, I believe that you should serve each other, not just one way. But I look for ways to serve my wife, man. And I found out through that her love language is acts of servitude. How great is that? Because I figured this service thing out, and that's her love language, and it made everything better. So our marriage is best it's ever been. I'm always looking to serve, and yeah. And what was the other part of the question?
Your kids, what's your relationship? How many kids do you have? I love to
Yeah,
get into this because,
yeah,
it's important for people to hear how successful men operate.
yeah. So I'll go back to the living demonstration thing. I always want to be a living demonstration, not just for my household, but for outside of my household. So for my kids, I want to be a living demonstration. How do I treat my wife?
Mhm.
How do I treat them? And the other thing is sometimes you got to be hard on your kids. Now, I don't hit my kids, but I'm hard on them. I have expectations and I expect them to be met. And if they fall short of it, we have a conversation. Here's what I expected. This is where you were. Let's see how you can get up to here. Right. And it's not things that I'm saying to them like they need to be a professional athlete. I'm talking about respect. I'm talking about being accountable, having a high level of responsibility and ethics, and having a dream and a mission and not let anybody talk you off of that. And put in the work, because anything that you get without work, you don't appreciate, and it can ruin you. And so what I've realized though, is that times I'll be really hard on my kids, especially my son. He's 19 now, but I was hard on him. And I felt bad at times. There's this thing, you want to be friends with your kids too. You want a great relationship in a way, but there's times where you have to put the foot down. And I realized pressure in the home creates diamonds, because when my son goes out in public, people love him. He's very respectful to people. He's ethical, takes care of people, looks to help people, but not always in the house necessarily. But when he goes outside of the house, he does. So I started to realize, okay, I was doing the right thing, even though I felt bad sometimes being hard on him. Pressure creates diamonds. And I'd rather be hard on my son at home and have a little bit of rough patches sometimes, that when he goes out in the world, he shines.
Yes, makes sense to me. All right. So as far as the road that you have taken in your life, I mean, throughout your life, there had to be some challenges that you can look back now and say, damn, those were defining moments in my life. Give me a couple.
So I mentioned I don't remember my parents together. So when I lived with my mom until I was 8. My dad was moving on to a second marriage. My mom was moving on to a third marriage, and I didn't want to move into another man's home.
Mhm.
and learning new rules and all this. So here I am, 8 years old. I said, Mom, I want to move in with my dad. I want to move. I broke her heart. She let me go. She told me that, later on in life, I used to cry myself to sleep at night because you left and this and that. And I didn't realize that at the time. But when I moved to my dad's house, I realized that there was some conflict there with, him and his new wife and my family. She didn't get along with them, and she didn't get along with my mom, obviously. And at the times that would be taken out on me, right? Because I was the common denominator. And there was a lot of abuse that went on and a lot of conflict. And as I was going on in the years, I lived there for like 2 years, hit 10 years old. I was like, I don't know. This doesn't seem right. I felt like the conflict in my life at that time, because I've been around a lot of brokenness, was normal. It's just everybody goes through this stuff. But I started realizing I had agency at a young age. And I was like, wait a minute, I moved here, so maybe I can get out of this situation. So I told my mom what was going on. She said, you don't need to live in that situation. I'll file court papers to get you out of there, but you got to stick to your guns because they're going to try to talk you out of it. So I said, go ahead, do it. I was on my, every other weekend with my mom that time. So I go back to my dad's house. I'm waiting. I go to school. I come home, go to school, come home, waiting for this bomb to drop, these papers to be served. And I come home one day and I could feel the tension in the room. 10 years old now, 10-year-old Mikey at the time. And my dad had court papers in his hand. And he said, hey, what is this? Do me a favor, go back to your room. So I went in my room and just with anticipation, just sitting there waiting for him to come back and confront me. And, my dad was my hero, by the way. I mean, he was a bricklayer. He had his own masonry company, big forearms, rough hands. If you shook his hand, you knew he was a hard worker. And we're Italian, so we don't carry wallets. We carry wads of, $100 bills, right? Or at least $100 bill on the outside. My dad used to show me $100 bills all the time. Yeah. And show, this is my hard work. This is what gets you. And this is what we can do with it. And this and that. And I always looked up to him for that. So he comes back, my hero, in his court papers in his hand. He says, hey, listen, it says here you want to move back with your mom. I don't understand this. You got everything you need here. We go on trips. We go on nice vacations or nice restaurants and all this and nice house. Why would you want to go back there where she's getting, barely getting by, paycheck to paycheck? Men coming in and out of the house all the time. Like, why would you want to do that? I said, listen, I made my mind up. I'm not open for discussion with this. 10-year-old kid saying this, right? And he says, you know what? Okay, that's fine. He takes that wad of $100 bills out of his pocket. He peels one of the $100 bills up, crumples it up, and he threw it at me. He said, here, you're going to need this then when you're living on the streets with your mother one day. He turned around and walked out. And what went through my head at the time was like, holy cow, what did I just do? What did I just mess up? But then very quickly behind that, a thought came to me where, you know what? I'm not going to need that money. I'll show him. And for 30 some years, Rafa, I've lived off this thought in my head, like, I'm not going to need that money. And every time I'd come into an adversity, I moved schools. So I'd get bullied and picked on and have things happen. And every time it would happen, I noticed what I was doing something. I reflected on this when I hit 40. I was doing something powerful. You see, in life, we have a choice. We can store things in our tank or our trunk. And I wasn't choosing to store it in my trunk, where most people store the stuff in their trunk, the garbage that happens to them, where it slows you down and weighs you down. I decided to store it in my fuel tank, and I converted it into fuel, momentum, motivation, learning experiences. And I would always elevate when an adversity hit. And so I wrote a book about this called Rocket Fuel: Convert Setbacks, Become Unstoppable. And it was the story of that and how I figured that out and how I've become unstoppable. Until I'm plucked from this planet, I just know I got to keep going. When things get tough in the mornings, when I wake up, sometimes we've all gone through it, especially those of us that are aiming high and trying to do some big things. It's tough. And some mornings you wake up and you're like, I don't feel like dealing with this stuff. And I just tell myself, keep going, dude. Keep going. Because I know if I keep going, I can't be stopped until I'm plucked from this planet.
Purpose-driven man is unstoppable. All right. So give me your 5-year horizon. Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
5 years from now, I've seen some quantum leaps that have happened recently. Quantum leap is something that when you get a target, you're chipping away at it. You're trying to move chip step by step. But you got to be open to quantum leaps, which means you skip a bunch of steps and things happen in your life. They're like, holy cow, how did that happen so fast? So I don't want to limit myself by putting that out there. Right. I think to myself, like, I want to be open and surrender to God's mission, whatever he's got for me. I say a prayer every day. Lord, give me the thoughts to have, the words to speak, the actions to take, and the people to surround myself with to serve your mission that you have for me and to glorify you. Live through me. Just let it go. I'm with you. So I don't know what he's got in store for me in 5 years. I really don't. I just know that I'm going to continue to serve people. I'm going to help people go further, faster with their mission, and more importantly than anything, help them identify what their mission is. And if I would have asked this question 5 years ago, and I answered it, I would limited myself so much because I had no idea what was possible.
Great answer. All right, where can people find you? I know that you have several social medias and a website too, I believe.
Yeah, best thing is Instagram is my favorite platform. I DM all the time on there, Mikey
Okay.
C-Roc. If you come on there, check our content out, you'll get a good vibe of where I stand and the level we're playing on, and just DM me and let me know, you saw me here, and or if you have any questions I can help you with, I'm here to serve.
Awesome, man. Well, listen, it's an honor to have you on this show. Would love to sit here and chat with you for hours. Definitely bring you on in the future, man. You're a good dude. I
Thank
like
you,
your
man.
vibe. All
Thank
right,
you.
brother. God bless you.
Thanks, Rafa.